Hello, this is Professor David Loertscher from the iSchool in San Jose State University, California. So today I'm delighted at the Treasure Mountain 7 Canada convention to talk with Pippa Davies, who I've known for many years. And so, Pippa, why don't you introduce yourself and your
you.
school, where
Thank
you are.
you. Thanks, David. Yes, I live in Nanaimo right now, but I work virtually for Heritage Christian Online School as the director of our Learning Commons. Heritage Christian Online School is a very diverse school with about 4,500 students in British Columbia, and we serve a population that has a large group of special needs students, students that are in blended environments, and then students that are in a campus environment, and students that work one-on-one with traditional online teachers, and students that are also online at home with their families and a supervising teacher. So we have all these different types of learning which facilitate amazing communication between teachers and students and parents.
And so you first developed a virtual learning commons. Tell about that.
So I started at the school the year after the school was started, and I was brought in because they heard I was a teacher librarian, and the superintendent at that time wanted me to create a web linking library. And he didn't really know about the word virtual library. In fact, he was rather scared of the word virtual library. He didn't understand that such a thing could exist. So I was at the time, I thought, okay, a web linking library is easy to do. I can put my hand around that. I can figure out a way to get a database and work with the IT team to get that up and running. And so we did that the first year. And then I got to know the school, the physical campus in Kelowna, and I met up with there was one library staff member there, and they were trying to figure out ways to get materials to families who were in rural areas around British Columbia. And my heart was, well, this is something I can really work on. I can provide means to make that happen. And so I went back to my superintendent and said, we've got this web linking library, but there's nothing like this in British Columbia, but why don't we look at ways of shipping materials across the province and provide students with packages of materials that meet the BC standards? And he thought that was a great idea. And so we hired a teacher to help us create the first blended guide, which was a document that lives online, but basically provides teaching lesson plans, resources from our Learning Commons, both digital resources and physical resources that can be then sent to families to help them meet the British Columbia standards of education. So this would provide an amazing tool to be able to assist parents who may not know how to meet some of those criteria. And we launched, this I think the second year. Then they were a hit, and so we started creating duplicates, and then our library, our physical library, started to grow. And as we started doing that, we started to reimagine what our library space could be, both the virtual space as well as the physical space. We were a very small physical space, so most of our digital resources were online. So we have a huge variety of subscriptions that offered all those kind of research tools, but also reading options, adaptive technologies for our students that needed it, because we have about a quarter of our students in our school, or even probably more now, that need adaptive technologies. I then read the book, Building a Learning Commons by Carol Cochlin and David Loertscher, and I was thrilled to be part of that first TMC, re-envisioning what my Learning Commons was going to look like. And so after reading it, I was so excited about the principles laid out in the book that I said to my superintendent, I actually want to get together and have a meeting and discuss how we can build this learning commons. So we did that, and he was excited, the principals at the schools were excited, and so we started on that process. And so our first virtual website was pretty basic. We didn't really have the tech skills that we needed, and our IT department wasn't as big as we wanted it to get the support that we needed at that time. So we basically did it all on our own, and our Learning Commons started to grow. And the virtual commons became a place. We also had something called Ning, which in those days was like a very fancy word
that's
for
an ancient technology
forum.
now, but
Yes, but it served the purposes of actually getting students online and collaborating and
Right.
forming book clubs and groups, and was a
Yeah.
means to get them thinking creatively and
so all kinds of conversations across
Exactly.
the province. So
exactly
this was a very early.
very early
So
experiment.
Zoom didn't exist at that point.
There was no Zoom,
Yeah.
and there was no live chat.
Right.
And so our virtual commons started to grow, and the students started to hear about us. And as a
Yeah.
result, we felt like we were making inroads with families and making those connections.
Right.
And then the next step was to build a better website. And that came a few years later. And again, we did it on our own because, again, we didn't have the IT support yet.
Right.
And so we built it on a WordPress website,
Okay.
which was pretty easy. My daughter's a UX designer, so she helped us a little bit.
Sure.
But most of it was just hard work mapping out the most important functions that the Building a Learning Commons book had told us about, and then putting it into a layman's terminology so that our patrons could understand.
Right.
So we tried to make it as simple and as elegant as possible. It wasn't perfect, by all means, but we were very proud of the website that we did, because we felt that we'd met a lot of the criteria. And as the website developed, so did our need to advocate for further support in terms of growing the website. And our school was actually was going through a branding at that time, redesigning their website. And so we then said, okay, we think it's time. We need to brand with the school colors, but we also need the support of IT to come on board and help us map out the next stage. So we're just in that process of setting out that re-envisioning of what that's going to look like, and the mapping out the architecture of the website. But before we get there, we actually have to wait for approval from the ministry to find out if a hybrid school, which is the approach that we're looking at, is viable. If they give us the green for go,
Yeah.
then we can go ahead and build this hybrid campus.
So this virtual library is developing constantly, isn't it? So it's
Exactly.
You don't build it once and use it many.
No, you
No.
don't, because your needs change. And
That's
one of
right.
the things we found is that in our new virtual commons, we have a student corner.
Yeah.
And so our student corner hosts games, it hosts online book reads, it hosts story time of the week. We have one of our librarians does story time. We also have contests throughout the year. So right now we're running a art gallery, and students submit all their artwork.
Wow.
And then there's a contest, and it's all displayed in a Google Slides.
Yeah.
So students see themselves and their art represented. Throughout the year, we have contests every month. So we have a STEAM contest, and then we have a writing contest and a poetry contest. We have a Santa contest not a contest, but students get to write to another person, another student in the province, and send a little gift up to $5 as a means to kind of
Oh, okay.
just
So you have service
connection.
projects going?
We have service projects.
Yeah.
We try and connect with our patrons all over the province, whether
Right.
it's through the courier dropping in stickers for families in our shipments,
Yeah.
whether it's providing one-on-one contact, in those hard-to-service areas. Sometimes our librarians will if they're en route to someplace, they'll drop off something just to give that extra personal connection.
So so you've had this virtual space going, but now you're inventing the physical space. Tell us about that.
Okay. So the physical space, right now we know that we could potentially get 2,000 square feet. So in order to move forward for the hybrid approach, I had to actually research what hybrid schooling was all about, even though we have been doing blended learning in many of our campuses all around the province. So what is blended learning? It's 1 day a week in a school with our teachers, and then students have online courses at home during the rest of the week. So parents have a day off, and students get a chance to collaborate and connect.
Okay.
So this hybrid school would be a kind of place where students, based on whatever grade they're in, could come for a certain amount of days of the week, and they could be taught by a classroom teacher, and then they'd have other days where they would be doing online courses with our online school. So now we have the infrastructure that we needed to be able to launch something like this.
Yeah.
We know that the physical space is going to be around 2,000 square feet, and we know that we have an architect working on it. We have a design and a very vague design in place. They're waiting on me to come up with a final design.
Right.
But so what we've come up with are the main criteria for the physical commons, what it should include.
Oh, good.
And so, that means like actually having things built in such a way that the space is fluid, that each part of the learning commons can represent a different theme on any different day, depending on what grade or group of students you have in the learning commons.
So total flexibility.
Total flexibility,
Yeah.
and then great sound, making sure that there's lots of light, and glass walls, opportunities for students to engage in 21st century skills, like right on walls, whiteboards, and desks that can be moved around and created into different shapes. Spaces where students can meet in groups, and spaces where students can find a quiet spot just to go and work on their own. The full range.
Quiet to busy to projects to creation.
Exactly. Exactly. And then maker spaces as well.
Maker space.
Maker spaces, green screen rooms.
There you go.
Music making. Whatever the new technology that is happening in our lives, we need to find a place to build that literacy in, to encourage our students and empower those students that need that.
So Pippa, lots of schools and districts that kind of like to know how to, integrate all this technology, both virtual and physical, into how do people get started, and what kind of support do you need to do this kind of stuff?
I'm very grateful that I have a superb team. First of all, my Learning Commons team is a very highly skilled, gifted team of people I basically try to find people that have very different gifts that they can bring to the table. And some of those gifts are either in cataloging, or they're in live chat reference queries, or they're in curation, or they're in subscriptions, sharing digital subscriptions, or they're in finding means to curate our curriculum for our unit study kits. So it took time, and it took a lot of advocacy to actually build that up over the years. But the more we did, the more demand we had from patrons for existing materials, and the more positive acknowledgement we got, right, from our community.
So it's the growth of trust across time.
Huge amount of growth of trust. Yeah. And they really ultimately are the people that we go to right up front to actually ask, okay, what kind of learning commons do you want? both the campus families, so the physical people living in the physical community, as well as the people living in the virtual community, right, or in the remote areas. What kind of learning commons do you want? What kind of things do you want happening in your learning commons? And so based on that, we create webinars. We do, right now this month we've had 2 or 3 webinars on different subscriptions that we host. We might get in a author to do a book talk. Lots of different digital technologies that families are struggling with, training that needs to be done.
Right.
Our patrons come first and foremost in everything we do.
It's just a total community kind of thing.
Absolutely.
It's a whole school learning commons. It's not just a single place. It's virtual. It's kind of, anyway. So
Yes.
what's your bottom line for the kind of needs that learners have? What do you think? Why do you think this is important, since you've worked on it for so many years?
The bottom line for what my learners need, I think our learners come from such diverse backgrounds that we need to be open to listening. They need to be heard. They need to find spaces where they can be creative, where they can research topics that they want to be able to research. They want to find resources that are accessible to them. And I think accessibility is vital in today's age. And so that's one of the things we're going to look at in our website is how accessible is it?
Right.
Are students going there? We will make sure that the stats reflect that. Our students are changing, year by year. We have much more mainstream homeschoolers now, and they're reliant a lot more on teacher support. And so it's finding ways to help our families so that they can sit back and relax more and let us guide and support them and support their families, their students.
Thank you, Pippa. That's been a wonderful conversation with you, and you've just done such yeoman service across the years. Thank you, and on
You're very
behalf of
welcome.
all the families and the students. And so,
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure. I love my job, and that's why I've stayed where I am, because I'm very passionate about what I do.
there you go.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, David.